Thank you for coming to today's session. We will start in a couple of minutes just to make sure everyone's had a chance to get in. I'll give it another minute because people are still trickling through, then we'll start. Okay, I think we'll make a start. Welcome everyone to this week's SIG Talks. I'm Joanne, the SIG convener. I'll start off with karakia, then I'll hand over to Sandra for her presentation. Tu taua mai I runa, tu taua mai I rao, tu taua mai I roto, tu taua mai I wahu, kia tu ai o te mari tu te mari o ki te katawa humie huie taiti. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I'll now pass over to Sandra for her presentation.
Kia ora. Thanks everyone. My name is Sandra McKenzie and I've been a cataloguer at the National Library for many years. I got access to MarcEdit about 5 years ago, not long after National Library moved library systems from Voyager to Alma. I've been using MarcEdit off and on ever since. I've learnt from other people in my library, watching YouTube videos and experimenting. I also did a Library Juice online course in November 2019. I am not an expert in MarcEdit, and thankfully I don't have to be to use it. So this talk is for those of you who have heard of MarcEdit but have never used it or seen it. So here's my talk outline so you know where I'm going. It should take about 30 minutes and then I'll leave time for questions and comments at the end. Joanne is keeping an eye on the chat for me, so you can put questions in there and we'll look at them at the end. So I'll go through what is MarcEdit, why I use it, what you need to get started, a concept called breaking and making in MarcEdit, how do I use it, and then I'll do a live demonstration in MarcEdit of 2 common scenarios. I'll mention 2 other features, then a wrap up, and then some resources and articles. So what is MarcEdit? It's a program to work with MARC records outside your library management system. It was first developed by Terry Rees in 1999 as he was faced with a large database cleanup job of about 45,000 records. At the time he started developing it, there wasn't other options to do what he wanted. Now library systems are more sophisticated and have inbuilt tools and functions that you can use for data cleanup, but they aren't always easy to use or accessible to a cataloguer. Terry continued to develop MarcEdit because it is useful and accessible. Wikipedia tells me as of 2011, it was used in 143 different countries. Now it includes lots of features and the ability to work with other data formats. So why do I use MarcEdit? To make it easier for people to find the resources they want. This is the long-range view of why I use MarcEdit, and it's also what I do when I catalogue. Close up, I use MarcEdit because it's an efficient way to do database cleanup, add additional subject headings, and sometimes to create new records, which all make it easier for people to find the resources they want. So why MarcEdit? To use my time productively. I can edit 10 records one by one quite quickly, but if I have 50 records or 100 records or 1,000 records, then editing one by one is not a good use of my time. With MarcEdit, I can do bulk changes to large numbers of records at one time, which leads me on to my next reason. It's fun. Well, I think it is. It's also free, but a security check may cost. At my institution, even a free download has to go through an IT security check, and the cost of that is charged back to the library. I don't need to know all its functions to use it effectively. Okay, what do you need to get started? The ability to export MARC records from your library management system, the ability to import MARC records into your library management system using the MARC field 001, your library system record number, as the match point for existing records. You need a conversation with your manager, a conversation with your IT support, and to download and install MarcEdit on your computer. Of course, the conversation with your manager and IT may come higher up the list. Now we're on to this foundational concept of breaking and making in MarcEdit. So a file of MARC records is in a format called .mrc. It looks like this. It's pretty horrid. We don't see it like this because our library systems display it in a way that we can read. To work with the records in MarcEdit, I have to turn them into a file format called .mrk. And to do that, I use a tool called MarcBreaker. When I've done that, the records look like this, which are much more familiar. The spacing and layout is important. Each MARC field starts with an equals sign, then there are two spaces. For fields with indicators, you have to put something in, and that's a backwards slash if it's a blank indicator. The subfield delimiters are $signs, and there is no space before and after the subfield codes. When I've made my changes to the set of records, I need to turn them back into the .mrc file format. And to do this, I use the tool called MarcMaker. So how do I use it? The first scenario is to fix a mistake in a subject heading in a set of records. And my example is register of births, etc., or registers of birth, etc. So I was doing a search in our catalogue for genealogy resources for Scotland, and I came across these two headings, register of births, etc., and registers of birth. The correct heading is the plural form. So I identified 24 records with the incorrect subject heading. This is a small set, which is a good place to start when you are new to MarcEdit. That's how I started. The payoff is when you're working with large sets. Scenario 2 is adding a local subject heading to a set of records. The Services to Schools team identified 173 books that are great for reading aloud and asked for a local subject heading to be added to the records for those books. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate. So my workflow is the same for both. The first thing I need to do is to find the records I want to edit and put them in a set. This is how Alma works. You put your records in a set, then you export the set. Your library system may have different terminology, but the process is the same. You identify the records you want to edit and then export those records only. I'm going to switch to MarcEdit and demonstrate the steps in the green box. I'm going to use MarcBreaker to turn the records into the .mrk format. I'm going to edit the records, use MarcMaker to turn them back into the .mrc format, and then I'm going to save and rename the file. The steps outside the green box are done in my library system. The very last one probably should have been highlighted in bold, that you do need to check what you've done. So, this is what Marc version 7.5 looks like in my library. In my library, I work with Marc 6.5. So the two scenarios I'm showing use core functions of MarcEdit. So the process would be the same in 6.5 and in 7.5. Okay. Joanne, can I check? Can you see my screen with MarcEdit?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I'm going to Marc Tools. I'm going to find my file of records, that's the register of births. Open it. And then my output file is where I want to put the records once I've edited it. I'm going to put it in the same place. And I'm just going to call it fixed. Okay. Then I execute. So there's 24 records. And now I'm going to edit my records. Okay. So under edit, I'm going to go find, and I'm going to look for register. I'm going to find all. So it's found register 41 times, but I've only got 24 records. And I can tell by looking through the list, it's found register in other subject headings that I do not want to change. So the thing with MarcEdit is it's not looking for the word, it's looking for that set of letters. So I need to change my find query. I go back here, change it to registers, find all. That's the headings that I don't want to change. Okay, I think I need to add register of births. Okay, I found it 25 times, which I didn't expect because I've only got 24 records. So what I'll do is check down. Okay, can I make that bigger? Yes, record 13 has it twice, one for a heading for Scotland, Orkney, and one for a heading for Scotland, Shetland. So that's fine, I'm happy with that, I can change that. So now I want to go back to my find query and to replace. I'm sorry about the odd format of this, it's because I've enlarged the font a little bit. So I want to find register of births, and I want to replace it with registers of births. I do replace all, I should see 25 records replaced, 25 changes made. Okay, 25 modifications were made. Phew. Another thing I can do is to highlight the heading and then right click and go find all 25 times. Okay, I think I'm happy with what I've done. So I'm going to save my file. Great. Now I'm going back to Mark Tools. I'm going to find that file I was working on, which was fixed register of births, that one. And I'm going to save it. I always change the name slightly so I don't get confused between the files that I've exported and the files that I'm going to import. And I do that by just adding for import on the end. And then I'll execute that. Do you know what I did? I forgot to click Mark Maker. I think I better do that again. 24 records, that looks better. Okay. So I'm going to go to my next example, back to Mark Tools, find my input file in my folder. Now, if I change this to all files, you can see the Mark files, the type is Mark, and then there's this really weird one that says mnemonic Mark. That's the .mrk files, and that's my mistake. Okay. $173 records and edit them. So this is the file that I want to add the local subject heading to. So I go to Tools, add field. It's a 655 field. It's got $1 as the delimiter, subfield A, and it's read aloud. It's got a subfield 2, local, and a subfield 5 for NZ. Then I add the field. 173 fields were added. That sounds right. Close. Let's have a look. There's read aloud. Yep, that looks good to me. Okay. So now I want to save this file. And then I want to remember to make it back into .mrc. So Mark Maker, my input file is that one. And my output file and I execute 173 records. Great. Okay. So there's two other features that I wanted to talk about. The Delimited text translator and RDA helper. For the purposes of this talk, Delimited text translator just means taking data from a spreadsheet and turning it into records. So here's my spreadsheet. Margaret Smith has kindly donated 20 children's books published in London in the 1950s. She sent us a spreadsheet of the titles. My boss wants brief records in the catalogue as soon as possible. There's a lot going on and there isn't time to catalogue them fully. So I've copied the spreadsheet into a new tab, and then I've split one column into two and added extra data. It's a little bit hard to see on the full spreadsheet, so I'll just work through one title. So I've got my 245A, my title, and my statement of responsibility in separate columns. Then there's my publisher, place of publication, publisher, and a date. And then it's a book, and it was donated by Margaret Smith. So this is the MarcEdit Delimited text translator screen. So again, it's my source file, which is my spreadsheet, and then the output file is where I want to put my records, and then I have to specify the name of the sheet in the Excel workbook. The next tab, next box, the delimited values, I don't need to touch. And in the options, I can edit the leader line because you can change it to other formats, but the default is books, so I don't need to do anything. Okay, so this is the next screen. And here is where I tell MarcEdit where each bit of the data should go. So that top box has a snapshot from my spreadsheet. I always label my columns where they're going in the record. So if we're looking at field 6, I've labeled my column 590A, and then below that is the data. So the settings box is where I tell MarcEdit where to map that to in the Marc record. It says add argument, but that basically means add mapping. In this context, an argument is just a mapping. So when I've added it, it will appear in the arguments box at the bottom. And this box is where I tell MarcEdit which mappings belong in the same field, like the publication details. So that's how my records look like at the moment in MarcEdit. So RDA Helper is the other feature I use. When I click on it, it gives me a list of options. I just want to add 336, 337, and 338 to these records. But I can use the RDA Helper to turn AACR2 records into hybrid RDA records. I can tick the box to delete the GMD and tick the box to expand the abbreviations in the 300 field. So that's what my records look like now with the RDA Helper. When I import the records into my library system, they will be assigned an 001 field. Using the delimited text translator depends a lot on the spreadsheet you have, what time you have, and what you want the end result to be. There's a great article in the Catapult March 2018 issue by Evelyn Draper from Hutt City Libraries, and it's called Library Catalogues Are Not Just for Books, How MarcEdit Saves the Day for the Toy Library. In it, Evelyn describes using this function of MarcEdit to create catalogue records for toys. There's also Catapult articles written by two of my colleagues. In the June 2018 issue, there's one by Richard Robertson, and the December 2018 issue, there's one by Erica. I've got the links in the presentation and I'll put them in the chat at the end. So my wrap up. MarcEdit is a tool for working with Marc records outside your library management system. I use it primarily for editing multiple records at the same time. Fixing up mistakes in subject headings, like Register of Births. I've fixed up series headings. I've updated name headings. I use it to add additional headings like Read Aloud. And sometimes I use it to create records if I have data to start with, like a spreadsheet of donations. I don't need to know all MarcEdit's functions to use it effectively. Just say that again, that's the beauty of MarcEdit, that you don't have to know about all the complicated, sophisticated stuff you can do to use it to benefit your users of the library. So there are some resources, and I'll put them into the chat at the end. The Library Juice course, the instructor is really great. It does cost, but I found it really helpful. The listserv is good, and the people in the MarcEdit community are really generous with their time and their knowledge. And that's the list of articles. I've put one at the bottom, was one that Sculpt did in 2016, which is a much more sophisticated use of MarcEdit. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. Were there any questions, Joanne?
Not so far.
Okay, right, I'll just find those links and put them in the chat.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Kirsty.
Sorry, I was going to type it and realised it will take me way too long. What I'm wondering is, so I have a colleague who is quite competent with MarcEdit, and
Yep.
so my goal of coming was to learn a bit more about what they do so that I know more about what I can ask them to help me with. And your presentation was fantastic. My question is there any way after you have found and exported the records to then share? I guess what I'm trying to do is update things where I can't always say what needs to be updated. So I'm wondering if there's any way that after you've kind of found and exported your records, you can actually share that information with a colleague. Like, can you just email, for example, the MRK file to someone else and they can open it? Like, is there any way to kind of work with somebody else, I guess is my question.
Yes, you can email attachments, file attachments. Yep.
And it would just open outside of MarcEdit?
Well, if you have MarcEdit on your computer, you can choose to open with MarcEdit, and mine's set up so that if it's a Marc file, it'll automatically open. It doesn't have to be in the MarcEdit format. MarcEdit's clever enough to know that if it's trying to open a Marc file, it will change it to its own format. If you have any, you can email me, Kirsten, if you want a bit more detail.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, still trying to figure out how it would work with us, but no, thank you. This has been super helpful.
Okay. Right, I'm just going to paste some things into chat. I did see one briefly. Thanks, Ruth.
Yes, we've got a couple of questions there now.
I'm not sure that the links went into the chat. I'm sorry. I don't think you can follow through.
No, it looks like they've just got the article citation.
Okay. I'll figure out something with Joanne so that the links to the resources and the articles are somewhere you can find them.
Yeah. As if you share your presentation, we'll put it up on the Describe NZ site so people will be able to access the links from there.
Okay. Macrons, yes. Sorry, I'm just opening up a file of records in MarcEdit. I just can't. It's really about you have to be careful with your character encoding as well. Yeah. I'm not sure if that one, Deb, about the macrons into MarcEdit. I'd have to have a look more carefully and get back to you. Gail asked, can you bulk add the full stop that precedes to rail? Yes, you can. Yeah. There's always more than one way to do things in MarcEdit, and it's just figuring out the best way that works for your particular problem. I mean, you could just do a find and replace with the delimiter and the 2 and the rayo, and make sure when you replace it, you put the full stop before the delimiter, the 2 and the rayo, or you might want to do it a different way. The direct link to the MarcEdit download is one in the resources. So it'll be on the slides. Oh, thanks, Natalie, for putting that in. Thanks for sharing that use case, Lynette. That was great. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Sandra. That was a very interesting presentation. At the moment, the MarcEdit website is down, but once it's back up again, as Sandra said, you'll be able to access a link from the presentation, or you can just try doing a Google search for MarcEdit and it'll come up. So I will just finish off with a karakia. If I can find my screen. Whaka I rawa aki te tapu ki runa kia waitea ai te awa kia turuki whakataha ai kia ruki whakataha ai homie huie taitie. Thank you.